Greetings, Israel. We're going to continue our reading of the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. This is part 5, and we're going to pick up with protocol number 16. So let's begin. In order to effect the destruction of all collective forces except ours, we shall emasculate the first stage of collectivism, the universities, by re-educating them in a new direction. Their officials and professors will be prepared for their business by detailed secret programs of action from which they will not with immunity diverge, not by one iota. They will be appointed with especial precaution and will be so placed as to be wholly dependent upon the government. We shall exclude from the course of instruction state law as also all that concerns the political question. These subjects will be taught to a few dozen of persons chosen for their preeminent capacities from among the number of the initiated. The universities must no longer send out from their halls milksops concocting plans for a constitution, like a comedy or a tragedy, busying themselves with questions of policy in which even their own fathers never had any power of thought. The ill-guided acquaintance of a large number of persons with questions of polity creates utopian dreamers and bad subjects. As you can see for yourselves from the example of the universal education in this direction of the Goyim, we must introduce into their education all those principles which have so brilliantly broken up their order. But when we are in power, we shall remove every kind of disturbing subject from the course of education, and shall make out of the youth obedient children of authority, loving him who rules as the support and hope of peace and quiet. We shall change history. Collectivism, as also any form of study of ancient history, in which there are more bad than good examples, we shall replace with the study of the program of the future. We shall erase from the memory of men all facts of previous centuries which are undesirable to us, and leave only those which depict all the errors of the government of the Goyim. Now we see this today, right? I mean, modern history is European history. There is no such thing as history of other nations except European conquest of those nations. And the world is better for the Europeans taking over the world and enslaving the masses, right? I mean, that's what we see, right? They retell the history, right? They replace the true Hebrews, call themselves Hebrews, and they are the serpent seed. Let's continue. The study of practical life, of the obligations of order, of the relations of people one to another, of avoiding bad and selfish examples which spread the infection of evil, and similar questions of an educative nature will stand in the forefront of the teaching program, which will be drawn up on a separate plan for each calling or state of life, in no wise generalizing the teaching. This treatment of the question has special importance. Each state of life must be trained within strict limits corresponding to its destination and work in life. The occasional genius has always managed and always will manage to slip through into other states of life, but it is the most perfect folly for the sake of this rare occasional genius to let through into ranks foreign to them the untalented, who thus rob of their places who belong to those ranks by birth or employment. You know yourselves in what all this has ended for the Goyim, who allowed this crying absurdity. In order that he who rules may be seated firmly in the hearts and minds of his subjects, it is necessary for the time of his activity to instruct the whole nation in the schools and on the marketplace about this meaning and his acts and all his beneficent initiatives. We shall abolish every kind of freedom of instruction. Learners of all ages have the right to assemble together with their parents in the educational establishments, as it were in a club. During these assemblies on holy days, teachers will read what will pass as free lectures on questions of human relations, of the laws of examples, of the philosophy of new theories not yet declared to the world. These theories will be raised by us to the stage of a dogma of faith, like Darwinism, as a traditional stage towards our faith. On the completion of this exposition of our program of action in the present and the future, I will read you the principles of these theories. In a word, knowing by the experience of many centuries that people live and are guided by ideas, that these ideas are imbibed by people only by the aid of education provided with equal success for all ages of growth, but of course by varying methods, we shall swallow up and confiscate to our own use the last scintilla of independence of thought, which we have for long past been directing towards subjects and ideas useful for us. The system of bridling thought it already at work in the so-called system of teaching by object lessons, the purpose of which is to turn the goyim into unthinking, submissive brutes, waiting for things to be presented before their eyes in order to form an idea of them. In France, one of our best agents, Bourgeois, has already made public a new program of teaching by object lessons. So we already see that in motion today. We're fed what to believe, right? I mean, even a few years ago, transgenderism would not have been an option. Now, you can end up in trouble for not supporting transgenderism or homosexuality, right? So you either take a stand. Who do you stand for? You stand with the Most High, or you stand with these devils, the serpent seed, who is changing laws and times, who are changing what's right and what's wrong. They have redefined what's right and what's wrong and have rejected the scriptures, promoting their satanic agenda. Protocol number 17. The practice of advocacy produces men cold, cruel, persistent, unprincipled, who in all cases take up an impersonal, purely legal standpoint. They have the inveterate habit to refer everything to its value for the defense and not to the public welfare of its results. They do not usually decline to undertake any defense whatever. They strive for an acquittal at all costs, cavilling over every petty crux of jurisprudence, and thereby they demoralize justice. For this reason, we shall set this profession into narrow frames, which will keep it inside the sphere of executive public service. Advocates, equally with judges, will be deprived of the right of communication with litigant. They will receive business only from the court and will study it by notes of report and documents, defending their clients after they have been interrogated in court on facts that have appeared. They will receive an honorarium without regard to the quality of the defense. This will render them mere reporters on law business in the interest of justice, and as counterpoint to the proctor, who will be the reporter in the interest of prosecution. This will shorten business before the courts. In this way will be established a practice of honest, unprejudiced defense conducted not from personal interest but by conviction. This will also, by the way, remove the present practice of corrupt bargain between avocation to agree only to let the side win which pays most. We shall destroy the clergy. We have long past taken care to discredit the priesthood of Goyim, and thereby to ruin their mission on earth, which in these days might still be a great hindrance to us. Serpent seed. I even wonder if these people are really human. The level of wickedness is so insanely intense that, it makes you think, could these people really be human? Or are they truly Nephilim, half human, half fallen angel? These people behave as though they know they can't be saved. They behave as though they know they are at war with the Most High. This is their behavior. So why is that? Is it because they know that they have no opportunity at salvation? They do everything to tear down the kingdom of God. Not that it's possible, but that's what they're attempting to do, and destroy God's people. Day by day, its influence on the peoples of the world is falling lower. Freedom of conscience has been declared everywhere, so that now only years divide us from the moment of the complete wrecking of that Christian religion. As to other religions, we shall have still less difficulty in dealing with them, but it would be premature to speak of this now. We shall act clericalism and clericals into such narrow frames as to make their influence move in retrogressive proportion to its former progress. Sorry. So, they're manipulating the religions. They're making people see the flaws in religion, because God, the Most High, never created religion, right? He created a relationship. He gave you a way to be in a relationship with Him. So, all religions are really bad in a way, because it's a practice that man does in an attempt to please the Most High. And in reality, the Most High wants your heart. He wants your relationship. What's the point of having a wife who doesn't love you? Right? And our people don't even understand that. That's why they do the law, statutes, and commandments thing over and over again, talking about how they pleasing the Most High while they go to work on the Sabbath day, while, they think they're keeping Passover, but it doesn't line up with what Passover says to do in the scriptures, right? That's hypocrisy, that's lying. And so that's religion, right? And the Most High is not dealing with religion. And that's why few people make it into the kingdom, both Hebrew and Gentile. Why? Because they have not submitted to the Most High, right? If you love your mother, father, anyone, even yourself more than Him, you're not worthy of Him. Think about that statement, okay? Because that's what it's all about, right? It's about a relationship. I mean, do you want a wife that you sign a contractual agreement? You must do X, Y, and Z. And you don't have to love me, but you got to do this, and that. She don't really talk to you much, every now and then. Or if it's your husband, as for the females out there, think about that though. They don't love you. They don't really know you, but they agree to do certain things to please you. Right. But there's no bond. There's no intimacy there. And the Most High, if you look and study the scriptures, wanted intimacy with His people. Hopefully the Gentiles and the Hebrew Israelites will figure that out one day. Okay, let's continue. When the time comes finally to destroy the papal court, okay, so they're focusing on the Catholic Church here, but the Catholic Church is behind all this, right? The tier, I'm going to tell you how the tier is. The top of the tier is the papacy. The second tier is Judaism, right? Or the fake Jews, right? The imposters. So, and then the lower tiers, the third tier is the Gentile powers or European powers. So it breaks down like that, top down. So when the time comes finally to destroy the papal court, the finger of an invisible hand will point the nations toward this court. When, however, the nations fling themselves upon it, we shall come forward in the guise of his defenders, as if to save excessive bloodshed. By this diversion we shall penetrate to its very bowels, and be sure we shall never come out again until we have gnawed through the entire strength of this place. So they're gonna turn the people against the papacy, so he says, and then they're gonna come in and say, hey, we don't want violence. Let's find a common ground and let's change things, right? Sort of what they do with everything else. Let's find common ground. Don't hate, don't persecute. Here's your new laws you must obey. That's how they do this. So they give you new laws out of conflict, right? So like say with bullies, the bullying whole thing, they talk about, oh, the kid got killed. Look at him. Oh, he's being bullied. No one should be bullied. And we all grew up with that, right? People rarely die from that, right? Kids didn't commit suicide for that in most cases, and still don't. But they're telling this story in order to effect political change. Same thing with the gender identity issue, sexual identity issue, right? They make it where there's such a intolerance by others that is so bad that we must effect change. And then so they push their policy that's against the Most High, right? They promote their secret Baal worship, right? And they get you involved in Baal worship, right? They get you involved in Baphomet worship, right? Because that's what transgenderism is Baphomet worship. So this is what they do. And they're playing chess, you're playing checkers, or you're not in the game at all, right? Okay, so let's continue. The King of the Jews will be the real Pope of the universe. See that identity theft. The King of the Jews will be the real Pope of the universe, the patriarch of the international church, the Antichrist. But in the meantime, while we are re-educating youth in new traditional religions, and afterwards in ours, we shall not overtly lay a finger on existing churches, but we shall fight against them by criticism calculated to produce schism. Okay. So you see the camps. The camps is a religion. The camps are a church. The camps teach contrary to Jesus. And they create their own version of what the Old Testament says, not understanding what the Most High is about. The Most High is a most holy, perfect being, right? That cannot tolerate sin, cannot tolerate disobedience, requires perfect adherence to the law. And if you don't have if you don't have the ability to keep the law perfectly, he requires you to die. But because of his unending love and unending mercy, he gave you a way out through his son. The shedding of his son's blood, his lamb, slain from the foundation of the world to save mankind. So now you have to bow the knee to his son. All power was given to him. Right? Some of these people send me emails or texts and say, oh, well, David is going to sit on the throne and blah, 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 blah. And Jesus ain't David and nah, 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 nah. You're a fool. Right? Isaiah 53 tells you who it is, who Yah's son is, who died for your sins, who's Yah's lamb slain from the foundation of the world. It tells you, and there's only one person who fits the bill. Right? Just like there's only one group of people who identify as the true Hebrew Israelites according to scripture, there's only one person, and that's Jesus Christ, Yahushua HaMashiach, as you might call him. Only he fits the description of the Messiah, the Son of God. And the Old Testament talks about the Son of God. So, choose this day whom you will serve. As far as me and my house, we shall serve the Lord. We shall bow the knee to Jesus Christ. Some of y'all don't like that name, but y'all know who he is. He is the one in the Bible that his 12 apostles told you all about, despite what you call him. Okay. You bow the knee. You don't question the Messiah, really. You once you learn of him, you trust him with everything you have. You know he's good. You do what he says. Okay. Let's continue. In general, then, our contemporary press will continue to convict state affairs, religions, and capacities of the Goyim, always using the most unprincipled expressions in order by every means to lower their prestige in the manner which can only be practiced by the genius of our gifted tribe. Our kingdom will be an apologia of the divinity Vishnu. So you worship Indian gods now? I thought they were Jews. You see, they serpent seed. Our kingdom will be an apologia of the divinity Vishnu, in whom is found its personification, and our hundred hand will be one in each, the springs of the machinery of social life. We shall see everything without the aid of official police, which, in the scope of its rights, which we elaborated for the use of the Goyim, hinders governments from seeing. In our programs, 1/3 of our subjects will keep the rest under observation from a sense of duty on the principle of volunteer service to the state. So those you convinced to work for the government like CIA, right? They observe you, they spy on you, and they're convinced that they're protecting the state. But they're serving the people that's in power over the state. And who's in power? Who has the power over the state? Follow the money. Follow who controls all industry, and you know. It will then be no disgrace to be a spy and informer, but a merit. Unfounded denunciations, however, will be cruelly punished, that there may be development of abuses of this right. Our agents will be taken from the higher as well as the lower ranks of society, from among the administrative class who spend their time in amusements, editors, printers and publishers, booksellers, clerks and salesmen, workmen, coachmen, lackeys, etc., etc. This body having no rights and not being empowered to take any action on their own account, and consequently a police without any power, will only witness the report. Verification of their reports and arrest will depend upon the responsible group of controllers of police affairs, while the actual act of arrest will be performed by the gendarmerie and the municipal police. Any person not denouncing anything seen or heard concerning questions of polity will also be charged with the made responsible for concealment, if it be proved that he is guilty of this crime. Just as nowadays our brethren are obliged at their own risk to denounce to the cabal apostates of their own family, or members who have been noticed doing anything in opposition to the cabal, so in our kingdom over all the world it will be obligatory for all our subjects to observe the duty of service to the state in this direction. Such an organization will extirpate abuses of authority, of force, of bribery, everything in fact which we by our counsels, by out theories of the superhuman rights of man have introduced into the customs of the Goyim. But how else were we to produce that increase of causes predisposing to disorders in the midst of their administration? Among the number of those members, one of the most important is agents for the restoration of order, so placed as to have the opportunity in their disintegrating activity of developing and displaying their evil inclinations, obstinate self-conceit, irresponsible exercise of authority, and first and foremost, venality. Protocol number 18. When it becomes necessary for us to strengthen the strict measures of secret defense, the most fatal poison for the prestige of authority, we shall arrange a simulation of disorders or some manifestation of discontents finding expression through the cooperation of good speakers. Round these speakers will assemble all who are sympathetic to his utterances. This will give us the pretext for domiciliary prerequisitions and surveillance on the part of our servants from among the number of the Goyim police. So basically they're saying if things get out of hand, right, we're going to take over and control the discontent that's rising up. We'll set up our own leader to lead it and thereby get the information on those who agree with him, even though he's our agent or a few of them are our agents. We will use that to get intel on them and report them to the police. As the majority of conspirators act of love for the game, for the sake of talking, so until they commit some overt act, we shall not lay a finger on them, but only introduce into their midst observation elements. It must be remembered that the prestige of authority is lessened if it frequently discovers conspiracies against itself. This implies a presumption of consciousness, of weakness, or what is still worse, of injustice. You are aware that we have broken the prestige of the Goy kings by frequent attempts upon their lives through our agents, blind sheep of our flock, who are easily moved by a few liberal phrases to crimes provided only they be painted in political colors. We have compelled the rulers to acknowledge their weakness in advertising overt measures of secret defense, and thereby we shall bring the promise of authority to destruction. Our ruler will be secretly protected only by the most insignificant guard, because we shall not admit so much as a thought that there could exist against him any sedition with which he is not strong enough to contend and is compelled to hide from it. So we won't provide him with a lot of security because we want everyone to believe that he's loved by all. Okay. Now, the protocols document, if you look at it, right, it's a plot to rule the world, but it's also a plot against the Most High. But it supports the Gentile theory about end times, right, where they say this one world government takes over the world, he controls all people, everyone on the planet, and brings Armageddon. But I do believe there may be some translation issues, because you also see, according to the scriptures, like we have taught, that Israel goes back home. Israel lives at peace for a while until Gog Magog attacks them. So Gog Magog being these Gentile rulers, right? The 10 horns that control, that destroy the woman that controls the beast, right? That group is these people who are behind this, right? They will survive. They will be weakened. From their current position of rulership for a long time as Israel is restored as a nation, right? As a powerful nation. So they won't have total absolute control, right? Their control will come at the end, right? When they get extremely powerful once more, one final time, and come against the people of Israel back in their land. And they will send their entire armies coming like a storm against the people of Israel, sitting in their land as a nation at peace and at rest, to overthrow them. And that's when the Most High, and that's when Jesus comes, stands on the Mount of Olives and destroys them. That's when these nations meet the Lord in the valley of Jehoshaphat, as in Job 3. And the nations get destroyed, and their bodies pile up as high as the horse's bridle. Okay, so that's how that's going to really play out. At least that's how we see it. So they won't have absolute rule. That's what they've been trying to convince everyone to stand down. Hey, y'all know it's prophesied. We're going to rule. Stand down. they're never going to have absolute rule. Never. Right? That's why the feet are not a solid feet of iron. Right? The statue of Nebuchadnezzar with the feet mingled with clay and iron. Why is it clay and iron? Because they will never have absolute power. They will have a form of disjointed power where they have influence worldwide, sort of like today. And at some point we go back home, and then we're a power that is not part of Nebuchadnezzar's statue. We are an opposing power that's back in the land, led by the Most High, led by Jesus, led by the Spirit, and living at peace for a few hundred years, maybe 800 years, who knows? And then when they restore themselves back to power, they make their final push, and Jesus comes and fights for us. So that's what the scriptures say. That's what you see in Revelation. That's what you see by the prophets. If we should admit this thought as the Goyim have done and are doing, we should ipso facto be signing a death sentence, if not for our ruler, at any rate for his dynasty at no distant date. Excuse me. Government by fear. According to strictly enforced outward appearances, our ruler will employ his power only for the advantage of the nation and in no wise for his own or dynastic profits. Therefore, with the observance of this decorum, his authority will be respected and guarded by the subjects themselves. It will receive an apotheosis in the admission that with it is bound up the well-being of every citizen of the state, for upon it will depend all order in the common life of the pack. Overt defense of the kind argues weakness in the organization of his strength. Our ruler will always be among the people and be surrounded by a mob of apparently curious men and women who will occupy the front ranks about him, to all appearance by chance, and will restrain the ranks of the rest out of the respect as it will appear for good order. This will show an example of restraint also in others. If a petitioner appears among the people trying to hand a petition and forcing his way through the ranks, the first ranks must receive the petition, and before the eyes of the petitioner pass it to the ruler, so that all may know that what is handed in reaches its destination, that consequently there exists a control of the ruler himself. The aureole of power requires for its existence that the people may be able to say, if the king knew of this, or the king will hear it. With the establishment of official defense, the mystical prestige of authority disappears, giving a certain audacity, and everyone counts himself master of it. The sedition monger is conscious of his strength, and when occasion serves, watches for the moment to make an attempt upon authority. For the Goyim we have been preaching something else, but by that very fact we are enabled to see what measures of overt defense have brought them to. Criminals with us will be arrested at the first, more or less well-grounded suspicion. It cannot be allowed that out of fear of a possible mistake, an opportunity should be given of escape to persons suspected of a political lapse of crime. For in these matters we shall be literally merciless, if it is still possible by stretching a point to admit a reconsideration of the motive causes in simple crimes. There is no possibility of excuse for persons occupying themselves with questions in which nobody except the government can understand anything, and it is not all governments that understand true policy. Protocol 19. If we do not permit any independent dabbling in the political, we shall, on the other hand, encourage every kind of report or petition with proposals for the government to examine into all kinds of projects for the amelioration of the condition of the people. This will reveal to us the defects or else the fantasies of our subjects, to which we shall respond either by accomplishing them or by a wise rebuttal to prove the short-sightedness of one who judges wrongly. Sedition mongering is nothing more than the yapping of a lapdog at an elephant. For a government well organized, not from the police, but from the public point of view, the lapdog yaps at the elephant in entire unconsciousness of its strength and importance. It needs no more than to take a good example to show the relative importance of both, and the lapdogs will cease to yap and will wag their tails the moment they set eyes on an elephant. So you've been well trained as a lapdog to march in peace with your grievances, thinking that the people in power cares at all what you think. And as long as you're marching, they're like, well, we're good, we're safe, because they're peacefully marching. They're not too mad. That's good. Okay, so they are sophisticated. But that's all governments. And we just need the government of the Most High to come in and take over everything. We can't live with these people no more. We really need to, and I'm saying Jew and Gentile, we really need to be under the rulership of the Most High, under the rulership of Jesus Christ. We need that. We can't survive under the rulership of man, because man his heart is always turned to evil. His heart is always turned toward doing the work of Satan. So let's continue. In order to destroy the prestige of heroism for political crime, we shall send it for trial in the category of thieving, murder, and every kind of abominable and filthy crime. Public opinion will then confuse in its conception of this category of crime with the disgrace attaching to every other, and will brand it with the same contempt. We have done our best, and I hope we have succeeded, to obtain that the Goyim should not arrive at this means of contending with sedition. It was for this reason that through the press and in speeches indirectly and cleverly compiled school books on history, we have advertised the martyrdom alleged to have been accredited by sedition mongers for the idea of the Commonwealth. This advertisement has increased the contingent of liberals and has brought thousands of Goyim into the ranks of our livestock cattle. Protocol number 20. Today, we shall touch upon the financial program, which I put off to the end of my report as being the most difficult. The crowning and the decisive point of our plans. Before entering upon it, I will remind you that I have already spoken before by way of a hint when I said that the sum total of our actions is settled by the question of figures. When we come into our kingdom, our autocratic government will avoid from a principle of self-preservation sensibly burdening the masses of the people with taxes, remembering that it plays the part of the father and protector. But as state organization costs dear, it is necessary nevertheless to obtain the funds required for it. It will therefore elaborate with particular precaution the question of equilibrium in this matter. So you'll be overtaxed and controlled by a heavy tax system. Okay, our rule in which the king will enjoy the legal fiction that everything in his state belongs to him, which may easily be translated into fact, will be enabled to resort to the lawful confiscation of all sums of every kind for the regulation of their circulation in the state. From this follows that taxation will best be covered by a progressive tax on property. In this manner, the dues will be paid without straitening or ruining anybody in the form of a percentage percentage of the amount of property. The rich must be aware that it is their duty to place a part of their superfluities at the disposal of the state, since the state guarantees them security of possession of the rest of their property and the right of honest gains. I say honest, for the control over property will do away with robbery on a legal basis. This social reform must come from above, for the time is ripe for it. It is indispensable as a pledge of peace. We shall destroy capital. The tax upon the poor man is a seed of revolution and works to the detriment of the state, which is hunting after the trifling, is missing the big. Quite apart from this, a tax on capitalists diminishes the growth of wealth in private hands, in which we have in these days concentrated it as a counterpoint to the government strength of the Goyim, their state finances. A tax increasing in a percentage ratio to capital will give much larger revenue than the present individual or property tax, which is useful to us now for the sole reason that it excites trouble and discontentment among the Goyim. So the Goyim don't like taxes. So they get angry and take it out on the leaders of the government. So they say here, the force upon which our king will rest consists in the equilibrium and the guarantee of peace, for the sake of which things it is indispensable that the capitalists should yield up a portion of their incomes for the sake of the secure working of the machinery of the state. The state needs must be paid by those who will not feel the burden and have enough to take from. Well, that doesn't happen. It's the poor that pay, and they can't afford to pay, and the wealthy get to keep their money. Ask the head guy of Amazon who got money back from the government after making billions of dollars. Right? Taxes have been used in most cases to control the average man and prevent him from rising and competing against the 1%. You don't have enough money to get out of debt. You don't have enough money to lift yourself up. You're too heavily in debt by paying taxes to use your money earned to help your family and help yourself. Such a measure will destroy the hatred of the poor man for the rich, in whom he will see a necessary financial support for the state. Will see in him the organizer of peace and well-being, since he will see that it is the rich man who is paying the necessary means to attain these things. So here they're saying really that we're going to tax the rich man at some point, and that's going to make the poor people happy. And so now the rich man's going to pay his share. But I think what's going to happen, you're going to find yourself in a system that is a total police state. And the trade-off is even the rich man will be under the thumb of that police state. So psychologically, the poor man will be happy about that. In order that payers of the educated classes should not too much distress themselves over the new payments, they will have full accounts given them of the destination of those payments, with the exception of such sums as will be appropriated for the needs of the throne and administrative institutions. He who reigns will not have any properties of his own once all in the state represented his patrimony, or else the one would be in contradiction to the other. The fact of holding private means will destroy the right of property in the common possessions of all. Relatives of him who reigns, his heirs excepted, who will be maintained by the resources of the state, that sounds like the royals in Britain, right, must enter the ranks of servants of the state, or must work to obtain the right to property. The privilege of royal blood must not serve for the spoiling of the treasury. So it sounds like they're not going to pay for the royals in the future. purchase, receipt of money, or inheritance will be subject to the payment of a stamped progressive tax. Any transfer of property, whether money or other, without evidence of payment of this tax, which will be strictly registered by names, will render the former holder liable to pay interest on the tax from the moment of transfer of these sums up to the discovery of his evasion of declaration of the transfer. Transfer documents must be presented weekly at the local treasury office with notifications of the name, surname, and permanent place of residence of the former and the new holder of the property. This transfer with register of names must begin from a definite sum which exceeds the ordinary expenses of buying and selling necessities, and these will be subject to payment only by a stamp impost of a definite percentage of the unit. Just strike an estimate of how many times such taxes as these will cover the revenue of the Goyim state. We cause depression. So like the 1927 depression in the United States, as an example. The state exchequer will have to maintain a definite complement of reserve sums, and all that is collected above that complement must be returned into circulation. On these sums will be organized public works. The initiative in works of this kind, proceeding from state sources, will blind the working class firmly to the interest of the state and to those who reign. From these same sums also a part will be set aside as rewards of inventiveness and productiveness. On no account should so much as a single unit above the definite and freely estimated sums be retained in the state treasuries, for money exists to be circulated, and any kind of stagnation of money acts ruinously on the running of state machinery, for which it is the lubricant. A stagnation of the lubricant may stop the regular working of the mechanism, so money needs to continue to circulate for their system to survive. The substitution of interest-bearing paper for a part of the token of exchange has produced exactly this stagnation. The consequences of this circumstance are already sufficiently noticeable. A court of account will also be instituted by us, and in it the ruler will find at any moment a full accounting for state income and expenditure, with the exception of the current monthly account not yet made up and that of the preceding month, which will not yet have been delivered. The one and only person who will have no interest in robbing the state is its owner, the ruler. This is why his personal control will remove the possibility of leakages of extravagances. The representative function of the ruler at receptions for the sake of etiquette, which absorbs so much invaluable time, will be abolished in order that the ruler may have time for control and consideration. His power will not then be split up into fractional parts among time-serving favorites who surround the throne for its pomp and splendor and are interested only in their own and not in the common interest of the state. Economic crises have been produced by us for the Goyim by no other means than the withdrawal of money from circulation. Huge capitals have stagnated with withdrawing money from states which were constantly obliged to apply to those same stagnant capitals for loans. These loans burdened the finances of the state with the payment of interest and made them the bond slaves of these capitals. The concentration of industry in the hands of capitalists out of the hands of small masters has drained away all the juices of the peoples, and with them also the states. The present issue of money in general does not correspond with the requirements per head, and cannot therefore satisfy all the needs of the workers. The issue of money ought to correspond with the growth of population, and thereby children also must absolutely be reckoned as consumers of currency from the day of their birth. The revision of issue is a material question for the whole world. You are aware that the gold standard has been the ruin of the states which adopted it, for it has not been able to satisfy the demands for money. The more so that we have removed gold from circulation as far as possible. Gentile states bankrupt. With us, the standard that must be introduced is the cost of working man power. Whether it be reckoned in paper or in wood, we shall make the issue of money in accordance with the normal requirements of each subject, adding to the quantity with every birth and subtracting with every debt. The accounts will be managed by each department, the French administrative division, each circle, in order that there may be no delays in the paying out of our money for state needs. The sums and terms of such payments will be fixed by decree of the ruler. This will do away with the protection by a ministry of one institution to the detriment of others. The budgets of income and expenditure will be carried out side by side, that they may not be obscured by distance one to another. So this financial description is a bit boring, isn't it? The reforms projected by us in the financial institutions and principles of the Goyim will be clothed by us in such forms as will alarm nobody. We shall point out the necessity of reforms in consequence of the disorderly darkness into which the Goyim, by their irregularities, had plunged the finances. The first irregularity, as we shall point out, consists in their beginning with drawing up a single budget, which year after year grows owing to the following cause. This budget is dragged out to the half of the year, then they demand a budget to put things right, and this they expend in 3 months. After which they ask for a supplementary budget, and all this ends with a liquidation budget. But as the budget of the following year is drawn up in accordance with the sum of the total addition to the annual departure from the normal reaches as much as 50% in a year, so the annual budget is trebled in 10 years. Thanks to such methods allowed by the carelessness of the Goy states, their treasuries are empty. The period of loans supervenes, and that has swallowed up remainders and brought all the Goy states to bankruptcy. You understand perfectly that economic arrangements of this kind, which have been suggested to the Goy by us, cannot be carried on by us. So we can't conduct business like them, otherwise we'll be bankrupt. But this is just for them, right? And this is why the Federal Reserve exists. The Federal Reserve is these people, right? Everyone knows the Federal Reserve is not a government institution. It's a private institution, and they get all the money and they control the flow of money. These are the people in power, right? Now you tell me how a nation lets a private entity controls the money. Why? Because they are the true powers, right? This is why they are allowed to control the money. Every kind of loan proves infirmity in the state and a want of understanding of the rights of the state. Loans hang like a sword of Damocles over the heads of rulers, who instead of taking from their subjects by temporary tax, come begging with an outstretched palm of our bankers. Foreign loans are leeches, which there is no possibility of removing from the body of the state until they fall off of themselves, or the state fling them off. But the Goy states do not tear them off. They go on in persisting in putting more on to themselves, so that they must inevitably perish, drained by voluntary bloodletting. Now usury. Usury is such a wicked thing. But let's read. Tyranny of usury. What also indeed is, in substance, a loan, especially a foreign loan. A loan is an issue of government bills of exchange containing a percentage obligation commensurate to the sum of the loan capital. If the loan bears a charge of 5%, then in 20 years the state vainly pays away in interest a sum equal to the loan borrowed. In 40 years it is paying a double sum, in 60 treble, and all the while the debt remains an unpaid debt. So this is the same situation we all face worldwide, especially in America, where student loans continue to grow because you can't pay them because your salary doesn't match the student loan. And so your debt grows and grows, and so your unpaid debt is never paid, and so you become a slave to them, to the bankers. And so this happens across the board. Even with mortgage loans, you pay your mortgage off, you still owe property tax, so you never really own anything. So you're always in debt to the bankers, and that's what usury is. You're in an unending system of debt that can, in most cases, not be paid off. And so you're a slave through a debt system, and they don't get their hands dirty, but they basically gain control over everything you own by usury. So from this calculation, it is obvious that with any form of taxation per head, the state is bailing out the last coppers of the poor taxpayers in order to settle accounts with wealth foreigners, from whom it has borrowed money instead of collecting these coppers for its own needs without the additional interest. So long as loans were internal, the Goyim only shuffled their money from the pockets of the poor to those of the rich. But when we bought up the necessary person, in order to transfer loans into the external sphere, all the wealth of states flowed into our cash boxes, and all the Goyim began to pay us the tribute of subjects. If the superficiality of Goy kings on their thrones in regard to state affairs and the venality of ministers, or the want of understanding of financial matters on the part of other ruling persons, have made their countries debtors to our treasuries to amounts quite impossible to pay, it has not been accomplished without, on our part, heavy expenditures of trouble and money. So, they do to the banks they do to the governments what they do to the individual, which is create a debt that's impossible to pay. And that's what the Chinese are doing right now in Africa to the governments of Africa. So the governments of Africa are like, well, we don't have the resources and the money in order to bring our culture into the 21st century, so we have to let Europeans and Chinese pay for it for us. And because the African governments cannot pay the debt, the Chinese or European governments gain control over the land and the people. And Africa has all the natural resources. Africa should be the most powerful entity on the planet. But Africa is a servant to all the surrounding nations. And Malema, I saw in a video, was like, well, why would, Jesus allow blacks worldwide to be in the situation they are, subject to all the nations, being hated by all the nations? He said this. And the answer is Deuteronomy 28. So if anybody got his ear, tell him read Deuteronomy 28. But at the same time, let them know that we're coming out of it, and we got next. We will be the head, according to scripture. Okay. Stagnation of money will not be allowed by us, and therefore there will be no state interest bearing paper except a 1% series, so that there will be no payment of interest to leeches that suck all the strength out of the state. The right to issue interest-bearing paper will be given exclusively to industrial companies who will find no difficulty in paying interest out of profits, whereas the state does not make interest on borrowed money like these companies, for the state borrows to spend and not to use in operations. Industrial papers will be bought also by the government, which from being as now a paper of tribute by loan operations will be transformed into a lender of money at a profit. This measure will stop the stagnation of money, parasitic profits, and idleness, all of which were useful for us among the Goyim so long as they were independent, but are not desirable under our rule. How clear is the undeveloped power of thought of the purely brute brains of the Goyim, as expressed in the fact that they have been borrowing from us with payment of interest without ever thinking that all the same these very monies plus in addition for payment of interest must be got by them from their own state pockets in order to settle up with us. What could have been simpler than to take the money they wanted from their own people? But it is a proof of the genius of our chosen mind that we have contrived to present the matter of loans to them in such a light that they have even seen in them an advantage for themselves. Our accounts, which we shall present when the time comes, in the light of centuries of experience gained by experiments made by us on the Goy states, will be distinguished by clearness and definiteness, and will show at a glance to all men the advantage of our innovations. They will put an end to those abuses to which we owe our mastery over the Goyim, but which cannot be allowed in our kingdom. We shall so hedge about our system of accounting that neither the ruler nor the most insignificant public servant will be in a position to divert even the smallest sum from its destination without detection, or to direct it in another direction, except that which will be once fixed in a definite plan of action. And without a definite plan, it is impossible to rule. Marching along an undetermined road and will undermine resources, bring to ruin by the way heroes and demigods. The Goy rulers, whom we once upon a time advised should be distracted from state occupations by representative receptions, observances of etiquette, entertainments, were only screens for our rule. The counts of favorite courtiers who replaced them in the sphere of affairs were drawn up for them by our agents, and every time gave satisfaction to short-sighted minds by promises that in the future economics and improvements were foreseen. Economics from what? From new taxes? Were questions that might have been but were not asked by those who read our accounts and projects. You know to what they have been brought by this carelessness, to what pitch of financial disorder they have arrived, notwithstanding the astonishing industry of their people. Okay, we're going to stop there. Next time we'll pick up on protocol number 21. Peace and blessing, Israel. Your captivity is ending.